And in terms of what I want to discuss here today, John, I listened to the brilliant Stadio podcast the other day, and on that podcast, Musa Okwonga described his feelings about the World Cup earlier in the week as a collection of games. And, you know, I'm awaiting tomorrow when England play at 1 p.m, and I'm wondering if, like, the fan in me is going to kick in a little bit. But today, it does feel a lot like a collection of games.
Yeah, and I mean, all World Cups are a collection of games which have that added imbued level on top of it, which is what we're talking about, that emotional experience and everything that it means for people, and that will be different in every person's case. But I think what's actually interesting about this tournament is that you can't get away with doing what you can do in other tournaments, which is put all of the other layers of meanings that maybe are negative away from your mind, and you sit back and you kind of think, oh, okay, here's these games. I'm with my friends. Usually it's in where we're at is the summer, so it's a sort of that's a very emotive period as well for us. Whereas in this tournament, I think this is why it's so people are struggling to feel the way that they usually feel about World Cups, because I think usually we can put all that stuff out of our mind, but this World Cup, it's impossible to not be uneasy. And I think what I found interesting myself personally is that I've realised that that's not what I'm supposed to be trying to do. I'm not supposed to be like getting to a position where I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable about this now. I can just throw myself in and enjoy it. Actually, I realised that feeling uneasy, that unresolved aspect of this World Cup, I think has to be there the whole time. And I think that's why it's important for us to continue bringing these things up, because those things are there. But I think going forward in the future, one of the things that I'm trying to really focus myself on at the moment is that we've already talked about this. There's a lot of whataboutery that goes on, but all public events of this kind of nature, the Olympics, world sports world championships, etc., they have these uncomfortable elements to it, and I think I'm personally way too adept at just forgetting those added levels that we've talked about, those negative levels. And I think I'm trying to remind myself in future to sort of be a little bit more cognizant of that fact going forward. So yeah, I guess my takeaway is to embrace the unresolved nature of it a little bit as consumers of this tournament, and try and remember that, you know, we're always being co-opted into these sorts of events, and the reason why these events happen is because the people at the top want to influence the way people think about things. And so as people at the bottom, I think it's incumbent upon us to just keep that in the back of our minds and think, you know, how am I being influenced here? Like, what are those big narratives that the people in power are wanting to push?
To allow the discomfort. I think that's a really good point. And I mean, JJ, even if you didn't want to, based on the coverage so far, the mainstream coverage, we should point out, around the World Cup, it's impossible to ignore. I mean, you know, Gary Lineker made a sort of a joke about it at the beginning of the BBC's opening coverage of the World Cup, to say, people say we should stick to sport, you know, we will do for a couple of minutes at least, and then most of the programme was about off-pitch issues. Can you think of another football tournament, at least, where, you know, in living memory, where that's been, or I suppose in broadcast history, where that's been an issue?
Not really, no. I can't think of any others. I haven't prepped any.
No, sure. And how do you feel about it so far?
I woke up today feeling quite excited about the World Cup, which I think is nice, because I love the World Cup and football generally. All the other stuff that we talk about and cover all the time is always there. The weird part of it is that, yeah, it feels like the collection of games, because there's other stuff going on in like November and December. There's all this stuff happening. People are still basically working. The Premier League was only last week, so I think in our like part of the world where we live, it's a very odd time to have this, like, you know, you focus all things on this because there's other stuff that you're thinking about. So it doesn't feel like you can. I mean, people will be working tomorrow for England and that, which I know they've done in the summer before. They've had that. They play during the day and stuff, but it just seems a bit.
It's odd. It was odd on a much less serious note that it was dark outside when we were watching the game at 4. That's sort of that I think that was environmentally at least impacted my feeling that this was a World Cup.
It's in the summer. It's something that you can do. So you always want to go outside in the summer. You can still go and watch those games in like pubs or something like that outside, or just have a bit of a summer. And it's a thing to have on during that time, because summer's like your holiday time, whereas people aren't having holidays now because they're working right up until they have their holiday in this part of the world before Christmas. But that's the thing, it's like we're not all of the world here, so I guess it suits other people in different places, so that's something to think about as well.
I think there's something I would like to say as well, because you know, I've noticed a couple of comments, and we've seen this over the last couple of weeks as well, people making the suggestion that because we're from Britain here, we shouldn't be having this conversation. I reject that, but also I want to make the point, as again a reference to the Stadio podcast, as again they did on the podcast, that the people of a country are not always represented by the regime. Seb and I had this conversation before, and we both said that we would hate at times to think that someone from a different country would think of us based on the actions of the government of whatever the time. And I think it's really important to remember that about the Qatari people at large as well. Like there have been lots of comments about the stadium emptying out towards the end of the game, and it's really, really important to remember that people love football everywhere. It doesn't matter that it's the thing that is a real shame about this World Cup is that it is the first World Cup in the Middle East, and that it feels very difficult to be able to celebrate that in the fullest way that you would want to as a result of those surrounding issues, Seb.
Yeah, I agree. And also, it's worth pointing out that I want to be able to enjoy this World Cup. I had quite a trying year for various reasons, and I've been speaking about the World Cup for about 6 months, and it was a kind of it was a sunlit uplands in many ways in terms of not necessarily the football and the work, but spending time with my friends. I work remotely. I work from Germany most times. Privileged to be here, and it's fun to actually be on the podcast. And so I want to embrace the spirit of it, and I want to wake up excited about a slate of games every day, and I want to be able to get past the unease that we've spoken about. And part of that is just it's so I think the reason to bring that up is just because I don't want to characterize myself as someone that's sitting there going, I'm determined not to enjoy any of it, and I want to be sort of even-minded in terms of the Qatari people and the football. And I think it's hard because there's so many different things to juggle. I think editorially, we've tried to cover all of those elements fairly and evenly. I think we've done a pretty good job. I hope we have. But yeah, I'm still trying to find that balance, I think.
If you liked today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you did like it, you might be interested in How to Watch Football, Tifo's illustrated book. It's 52 rules for understanding the beautiful game on and off the pitch, and it is the perfect holiday gift. How to Watch Football is out now in stores and online. See the link in the description to find out more, and thank you for watching today's video.